guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Let's crack real math. My name is Viraaj, and in this video we'll be having a look at how we can complete the square of an expression. And in this video we'll also be having a look at how we can use that to simplify expressions and also solve expressions. So please, before we start, do not forget to perform an LSS, that is like, share and subscribe. And yep, let's get started. So before we dive into examples, let's see what I mean by completing the square. Let's say I have something like x plus b squared. Now if I want to expand this, I know this is simply x plus b into x plus b, and expanding this you have x squared plus 2bx plus b squared. Please, if you do not know how to expand brackets or you're not comfortable with it, please have a look at my previous video on expanding single, double and triple brackets. Now, since I have something like this, it's equivalent to say that if x plus b squared is simply equal to x squared plus 2bx plus b squared. Why this equation is correct is because I simply expanded x plus b squared, and in the end I got this, the same thing. So if I were to again equate this, I would have the same thing. And let's say I had an expression in the form of x squared plus 2bx. As you can see, this over here and this part over here are the same. So now your new equation would be x squared plus 2bx equals to x plus b squared minus b squared. Why minus b squared? Because I simply took this b to the other side. So if I were told to factorize or complete the square of something like this, I simply know that I just have to take the b squared over here and this becomes minus. Similarly, if it was something like x squared minus 2bx rather than plus 2bx, this would simply just become x minus b squared minus b squared. Minus and minus would here stay the same, and the plus and the positive over here would just change in the end. So now that we have our ground foundation on completing the square, let's have a look at some examples, because this is a topic that is more understandable when you do examples. So the first one I have here, it says x squared minus 12x, and we need to complete the square. So whenever you are completing the square, the first thing you should do is always divide the coefficient of x by 2, and only do that by 2 and only to the coefficient of x. Say for example, if I had something like x squared minus 6x, I would divide this by 2 and I would then end up with x squared minus 3x. Although this is not the final answer, and I will show you in a minute how we can manipulate this, you should always only divide the coefficient of x by 2 first. So doing that, we know that minus 12 divided by 2 is minus 6. So we would now have something like x squared minus 6x. However, when we are doing completing the square, we do not write it like this. What we simply do is, once we've divided this by 2, we write it as x minus 6 squared minus 6 squared. Now this may look confusing at first, but let me just explain what I did. What I did was I divided my coefficient of x by 2, and whatever that was, in which in this case is 6, I brought it over here. I got rid of this square over here and put x minus 6 together and square rooted both of them, and then I subtracted it by the same to the power of 2, which is over here, which is 6. So doing this, we will now have x minus 6 squared minus 36. Now another thing you may be wondering is, oh, minus 6 squared is meant to be 36 because minus 6 times minus 6 is 36, but when you're completing the square, you always subtract the power. So even though minus 6 times minus 6 is 36, you would keep it as minus 36. Whenever you do this, you always subtract the power from what is inside. So likewise, if this was suppose not 6 and 4, I would have done minus 4 squared. So I would take the same number that's inside and subtract it with the power of 2. And this in the end does become your final answer. Now I will just do this for this one question, because if I were to do this for all the other questions, this would take a while, but you can always confirm if your answer is correct by using the first equation you originally had. So let's just say when x is equal to 2 over here, what exactly is the answer of the equation? This would be 2 squared minus 12 into 2, this would be minus 20. And when x is 2 over here, you should get the same thing. So let's do this again. 2 minus 6 squared minus 36, and I'm getting minus 20 as well. So again, you can take x to be any number, not just 2, maybe 55, 69, 4, 1. You should always get the same answer as you go over here and over here. I'll do this for just this one question, but now you know that you can do it for every other question. You can just confirm your answer when you're done completing the square. Moving on to our next example. Okay, don't need that. Next example says we have x squared plus 5x. Now again, first things first, divide your coefficient of x by 2. Doing that separately, we know that is equal to 2.5. So now take this 2.5 into the bracket alongside x. So we now have x plus 2.5 all squared minus 2.5 squared. Again, this number and this number stay the same, and you square root to subtract. Always subtract to the square number of the number inside over here, and the x squared over here simply just becomes x because you bring the 2.5 together with it and square that. And upon doing this, we would now have x plus 2.5 squared minus 6.25. Again, you would be saying minus 2.5 times minus 2.5 is positive 6.25, but in completing the square, you always subtract no matter what. And that is your answer for this. Again, you can check your answer. You can say x maybe to be 2 over here, and then x equals to 2 over here, and then you should get the same answer for both of them. If you do get the same answer, that means you are correct. Moving on to the next example, we now have x squared minus 20x. Now, again, first things first, divide your coefficient of x by 2. We know this is minus 10. So take away the square root from x. You put it as x. Bring your minus 10 down here. So this becomes minus 10. Square all of that and then do minus 10 squared. The same number that's in here is the same number that's in here. And doing this becomes x minus 10 squared minus 100. Always remains minus. And that is your final answer for this question as well. Remember, you can always check your answer by representing x as something. Moving on to the next example. This question, we have 5x squared minus 20x. Now, yes, we will be dividing this by 2. But firstly, we need to look at the coefficient of x squared as well, which in this case is 5. So we need to get rid of that 5. Now how we can get rid of that 5 is by dividing the whole expression by 5. So upon doing that, let's divide by 2. Simply divide the whole expression by 5. This would simply become x squared minus 4x. 5 and 5 would cancel out, and minus 20 divided by 5 is simply minus 4. Now, all we can do is divide this by 2 and then do the completing the square routine. However, this time we need to make sure that this, or the final answer you have, is all multiplied by 5. because we originally divided by 5. So I'm going to be using square brackets to represent what's happening inside, and normal brackets to represent what's happening even inside completing the square. So completing the square of what's inside, we will now have 5 square brackets x minus 2 squared minus 2 squared. Y x minus 2 because minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2, and y minus 2 squared because that's the same number as inside. As always, the x loses its square power because it comes together with minus 2, and all of that is squared. And doing this, you will now have 5 into square brackets x minus 2 squared minus 4. Again, this always remains minus, and 2 squared is 4, so minus 4. And now you apply the 5, so this simply becomes 5 into x minus 2 squared minus 20. Y minus 20 because minus 4 times 5 is minus 20, and y 5 into x minus 2 squared because you are simply multiplying this out. If we were to handwrite this and say x minus 2 into x minus 2 and then multiply all of that by 5, that would take very long. So it's more efficient to just leave it like this, and that is your final answer for that question. Again, you can always check your answer by letting x represent any sort of integer. Moving on to the next example, we have 2x squared plus 9x. Now again, we have a coefficient in front of x squared, so let's divide it by that coefficient. Divide by 2. You always divide it by that coefficient that's in front of x squared. So divide by 2, this cancels this. You have x squared plus 4.5x. Why 4.5? Because 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. And remember, all of this will now be multiplied by 2 because you divided it by 2 to begin with. And so doing this, completing the square inside. Okay, sorry, Microsoft Whiteboard just. Okay. You know that this is now 2 into x plus 2.25 squared minus 2.25. Why did I get my 2.25? Because 4.5 divided by 2 is 2.25. Y minus 2.25 squared because the same number will happen over here. And again, x loses its power because it combines with 2.25, and all of that gets squared. And doing this, we have 2 into x plus 2.25 squared minus 2.25 squared is minus 5.0625. Minus 5.0625. And again, you now multiply everything inside the square brackets by 2. So this becomes 2 into x plus 2.25 squared, and minus 5.0625 times 2 is minus 10.125. Do ensure that the minus sign always stays there, unless we will look into further examples, then you can see how it can be positive. Moving on to the next example. This is a bit different, but let's go through it. It says x squared minus 4x minus 12. Now, we are familiar with this part of the equation, but this time we have a whole number with a independent of the term of x. So what we can do is we can simply complete the square as normal for this and just keep this as a binary product. Just keep it aside, we'll use it later. So this, completing the square of this, we know this is x minus 2 squared minus 2 squared minus 12. What I did, I just brought the minus 12 down as it is, and completing the, okay, sorry, okay, yeah, x squared minus 4x, completing the square, minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2. Take that minus 2 outside as well, and x loses its power because it combines with minus 2, and all of that gets squared. simplifying this part over here, we have x minus 2 squared minus 4 minus 12. Again, I just brought down 12 as it is from the beginning. And simplifying this even further, we would now have x minus 2 squared minus 16, and that is your final answer. As you can see, I didn't manipulate minus 12 much, just brought it down and simplified it at the end. The main part was still to complete the square over here. As always, you can confirm your answer by representing x as a number over here, putting it in the equation over there. Whatever you get as your answer, the same number putting it in over here should equal you the previous answer. Moving on to the next example. We have 2x squared minus 8x plus 3. Now, this does look a bit difficult at first, but let's have a quick look. The first thing to do is make this the priority, and we have a coefficient in front. So divide everything by 2 to get rid of this coefficient. This would cancel out this. We would have x squared minus 8x divided by 2, that's minus 4x, because minus 8 divided by 2 is minus 4. And 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So now you have something like this, and remember all of this, okay, sorry, all of this by 2, because you originally divided it by 2. Now, let's complete the square inside as it is first. So we know this would now become 2 into x minus 2 squared minus 2 squared plus 1.5. Again, minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2. Take that same minus 2 outside and you square it. And the square over here loses its power because it combines with the minus 2 from here, and all of that gets squared. Simplifying this, we have 2 into x minus 2 squared minus 4 plus 1.5. As you can see, not interfering with the 1.5, just bringing it down as it is, and we'll simplify it now because this will now become 2 into x minus 2 squared minus 4 plus 1.5 is minus 2.5. Let's have a quick look at that. Yep, it is. This becomes minus 2.5. And now, in the end, you just times everything by 2. So this becomes 2 into x minus 2 squared. And minus 2.5 times 2 is minus 5. And that is your answer for that question. Again, I will say that you can represent it, we could represent x with any number in the first part over here, and then you will see that it should equal the same answer if you represent it with the same number over here. Moving on to the next example. Now this next example tells us, it says x squared plus 4x minus 3 equals 0, and it wants us to solve the equation. As you can see, this is a quadratic equation. Now, in my previous videos, I have explained that solving quadratic equations, you can do it via the formula method or the factorization method, but there's also another method you could use, and that is completing the square. Let's have a look. Let's complete the square first. We know that when we complete the square, we have x plus 2 squared minus 2 squared minus 3. This simply becomes x plus 2 squared minus 4 minus 3 equals 0. This is x plus 2 squared minus 7 equals 0. Why minus 2? Because, okay, whiteboard doesn't want to comply. So you divide 4 by 2, you get 2 over here, and then always take the minus of that. So yep, minus 2 squared and minus 3, you get minus 7. Now, as you can see, if you want to solve this, what you would do next is you would take the 7 to the other side. So it would become positive 7. And if you want to get rid of the square, you would square root this side. So now you would have something like x. Okay, you know what? We don't need the bracket now. So let's get rid of the bracket. X plus 2 equals to plus minus root 7. Never forget that there's always a plus minus in front of any root of any number. And to solve this, you now know that your answer for x is either positive root 7 minus 2 or minus root 7 minus 2. Why minus 2? Because the 2 would go over to the other side and become minus. And doing both of these separately, we know that okay. So doing these two questions separately, we know that the first answer would be root 7 minus 2, that is 0.65 to 2 decimal places. Please make sure you work with the limit of accuracy. And your next answer, minus root 7 minus 2, would be minus 4.65, also to 2 decimal places. And that is your answer for this question. The two answers for this question. Moving on to the next example. This time we have 2x squared minus 8x plus 5 equals 0. First things first, divide your coefficient of x squared, if there is, by itself. So everything divided by 2 just cancels out this. You have x squared minus 4x plus 2.5. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, and minus 8 divided by minus 2 is minus 4. Again, all of this, remember, times by 2 and still equals 0. So let's complete the square inside the square brackets as normal. So this will become 2 into x minus 2 squared minus 2 squared plus 2.5. Square brackets equals 0. 0, yep. So 2 into x minus 2 squared minus 2 squared plus 2.5. Let's do that. I think that's minus 1.5 equals 0. And in the end, just times what's inside by 2. So this becomes 2 into x minus 2 squared minus 3 equals 0. Now, to solve this, we can take the 3 to the other side for starters. So 2 into x minus 2 squared equals plus 3. That's positive 3. Divide your 3 by 2, so you now have x minus 2 squared equals 3 over 2. We take the 2 to the other side. Your x minus 2 is simply the plus or minus root of 3 over 2. And now for your x values, your x is either plus root 3 over 2 plus 2, or it's minus root 3 over 2 plus 2. Why plus 2 in both occasions? Because the minus 2 goes over to the other side and becomes plus 2, and take either the positive root or the negative root for your answers. And putting this in your calculator, we have positive root 3 over 2 plus 2, that is 3.22 to 2 decimal places. And doing it the other way, minus root 3 over 2 plus 2, that is 0.78 to 2 decimal places. And those two are the final answers for this question. So heading to the final example for today. Final example is x into x minus 4 equals 20. This is a challenge question. Challenge question. Please pause the video and have a go at this yourself. And once you've gotten your answer, click resume and see if you are correct or not. So to start with this, we can see that we do not have it in the form of a quadratic equation, but we can make it. So all we have to do is just expand the bracket here. This becomes x squared minus 4x equals 20. Take your 20 to the other side, it becomes minus. So x squared minus 4x minus 20 equals 0. So we're solving for x as usual. So let's complete the square first. No coefficient in front of x squared, so we don't need to divide it by anything. This simply becomes x minus 2, x minus 2 squared minus 2 squared again minus 20 equals 0. Why minus 2? Because minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2, and you take the same minus 2 outside and square it. Remember, this always stays minus, and I just brought down the minus 20 as it is. Going on, this becomes x minus, right, this becomes x minus 2 squared minus 4 minus 20 equals 0. This becomes x minus 2 squared minus 24 equals 0, because minus 4 minus 20 is minus 24. So taking a 24 to the other side, this becomes x minus 2 squared equals 24. Your x minus 2 is the square root, the positive or negative square root of 24. Your x is either positive root 24 plus 2 or minus root 24 plus 2. Now y plus 2, because you take the minus 2 to the other side, and become positive 2. And putting this in your calculator, you have root 24 plus 2, that is 6.90 to 2 decimal places, and minus root 24 plus 2, that is minus 2.90 to 2 decimal places as well. And that is your final answer, the final two answers for that question as well. So as you can see, guys, there's another way of solving quadratic equation, and that is by completing the square. Obviously, priority first is to look at the coefficient of x squared, whatever's in front over here. Nothing's in front of x squared, then all you have to do is take whatever is in front of x and divide it by 2, and then of course the square loses its power. This becomes x minus whatever gets divided over here. Say y gets divided by 2, this becomes plus y over 2, and then you would square root all of that, and then always remember minus the y over 2 squared, whatever your y is after dividing it by 2. And if you have another term independent of x, just drag it down, just bring it down until you can simplify it. So thank you for watching this video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please do not forget to perform an LSS, that is like, share and subscribe, and thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice one.